Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Burn the Rule Book podcast. This is the podcast where we break down everything you were never taught about menopause, mental health, and relationships one truth at a time. I'm Rachel Boyle, a licensed couples therapist, sex therapist, and certified menopause specialist. This podcast helps you understand what is actually happening to your body, mind, and relationships, and gives you real tools to move through life with clarity, calm, and connection. Let's get started. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Burn the Rule Book podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about perimenopause and boundaries, how to reclaim your power and protect your peace. I get this question so many times from women about how to get calm, how to get grounded, how to move through the stage of perimenopause. And boundaries are super important because boundaries can completely transform your life. They can transform this difficult experience of going through perimenopause. And what's really important about boundaries is that boundaries aren't walls. They're also not ultimatums. They're about holding yourself in kind regard, setting boundaries for yourself, and setting boundaries for others. So what does that look like, setting boundaries for yourself and setting boundaries for others? Because most of us just hear this big word about boundaries, and we don't really know what that means. So I use a lot of the work from Pia Melody, and she's one of the foundational voices in codependency and relational healing. And how she defines boundaries is as a system of limit setting that protects a person from being a victim and contains a person so that they are not offensive. Pia Melody describes three systems of boundaries that are really important. So the first one is an external boundary. External boundaries are limits that you put to keep yourself safe from other people coming into your space and doing hurtful things to you. So external boundaries is, we've got our houses, right? So we don't let people into our houses that aren't safe. So that's a physical limit to keep people from coming in and hurting us. There can also be boundaries around what somebody says to us, right? So an example of an external boundary is if somebody is saying something verbally abusive or hurtful, you don't have to stay in the presence of that other person. So you can ask them not to say the thing that they're saying, right? And then if they keep saying that, depending on if this person lives with you in your house, let's say it's a partner or it's another family member, you can let them know like, hey, if you keep saying that thing, I'm going to go into the other room. Because remember, you can't control what somebody else is doing. You can only control yourself. So you can go into the other room and get some quiet, maybe do some breathing exercises, get yourself grounded again before you re-enter the conversation. Now, let's say this person follows you to the other room, which is not healthy behavior, but let's say that they're doing that. Then you can say, hey, if you keep following me around, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a drive. I'm going to go run some errands so that you can get some space from this person who's insisting on having this conversation right now. So that's a way that you can have boundaries to keep yourself physically and emotionally feeling safe. So the next one is a containing boundary. So a containing boundary is what keeps the world safe from me, right? So a containing boundary is, let's say I'm really irritated about my partner or my child or a parent or somebody in my life, and I'm thinking of all the things that I want to say to them right in this moment. And while the things might be true of what I want to say right in this moment, it doesn't mean that I need to deliver those things in a way that could be hurtful. So a containing boundary is I keep certain thoughts to myself. I also think about how I'm sharing before I share it so that I don't hurt another person, right? Because honesty can be used in a kind and loving way, or it can be used as like a hammer. You can really hit somebody over the head with the truth, kind of like this person needs to know what I'm going to tell them. And I don't care how it comes across. I think that they need to know. That's actually a really hurtful thing to do to somebody. So a containing boundary keeps other people safe from you. The third kind of boundary is like it's an internal belief system boundary
that protects you from what others are saying about you. So let's say someone gives you a piece of feedback, right? They want to share some information with you. You take that information in and you think about it like, hey, does this apply to me? Is this true about me? And if it's something that is true about you and does apply to you, then you want to take that information in and make changes. If it's something that you find that's not true about you, then it's like you let that information bounce off of you. Like, let's say that somebody is saying something mean, right? It's not true. That internal belief boundary keeps you safe from what other people are saying about you that just isn't true. Otherwise, if we don't have one of those internal boundaries, we would collapse inward every time somebody told us something that wasn't true about us and that was hurtful. Okay, so in relationship, there are two types of ways that people can misuse boundaries. Okay, one of them is walled off behavior. Walled off means that I am not emotionally available to connect with. I might always be busy finding other things to do. If someone tries to come and talk to me, I might shut down what they're saying by saying, no, that's not true about me, like all the time, right? Not considering whether what they're saying may or may not be true. That is a walled off behavior. We can also be boundaryless in our relationships, or people can be boundaryless with us. So boundaryless means oversharing, overgiving, and taking on the responsibility of others' emotions. So when we're boundaryless, that means that we don't have a protective boundary for putting limits on ourselves, right? Limit on what I'm going to share with somebody, limit on what I'm going to do for somebody else. And we end up saying yes to so many things. We end up getting burnt out and resentful. So when you don't have boundaries in your life, you end up getting burnt out and resentful, right? And that's not great for your relationship with your partner. It's not great for your kids, and it's not great for you, right? Because that's exhausting. So no matter which pattern that you're doing, both patterns, whether you're walled off or boundaryless, both patterns keep you disconnected from authentic intimacy and keeps you from being in your own circle of emotional health. And sometimes in perimenopause, women can swing between the two, right? You give, you hit your limit, you shut down, and then you're like, I'm going to go away. I'm going to withdraw. It's too much, right? So now you flip to the other side of walled off. And that's not healthy either. So by setting clear, healthy, loving boundaries along the way, you don't have to get overwhelmed and completely walled off, because that's where the resentment comes in. So in perimenopause, it's like the volume gets turned up on everything that's been running quietly in the background now feels like overwhelming. And part of it's due to the hormonal changes and your stress tolerance. And as you know, there's a roller coaster that happens with estrogen and progesterone. And those hormonal changes lowers your stress tolerance. It increases your emotional reactivity, and it makes your body less willing to tolerate your own self-abandonment. So this might sound a little dramatic, but think of it this way. For years, most women override their own needs. Like they just keep putting the sleep off. They're taking care of others. They're doing all the emotional and mental labor and the physical labor with the household, with the kids. They say yes to volunteer things at the schools, in their communities, and they're likely also working. You hit perimenopause, you just can't do all that anymore. Your body literally will start to shut down. It's like your body's just saying no more. Now it feels just unbearable. And maybe in the past, you used to say yes to everything. Now you just almost can't. You might have also stayed silent in your marriage to avoid conflict. And now that silence feels suffocating, because that's that resentment that builds up from not having boundaries. Let's say you used to say yes to work requests later in the day, or you used to say yes to volunteering at your kids' school, and you used to say yes to making big, huge birthday parties for your kids, and now it's just too much. So what I want you to know is that this is not a failure. It is actually a time for your body to start letting its natural wisdom resurface. It's your system recalibrating to a more balanced life. So here are some tools for healthy boundaries. First, I want you to ask yourself, do I lean towards boundaryless? Do I lean towards being overly responsible, overgiving, doing above and beyond, rescuing, not asking for what I need? Or do you go to the walled off, which is detached, defensive, and quick to say, I don't care, and check out? So neither one of these strategies is better than the other. What they are adaptive strategies that you've learned to do throughout your lifetime when you didn't know how to set healthy boundaries. So now the goal is for you to find your grounded center. That grounded center is where you set healthy boundaries from. So in order to strengthen your containing boundary for self, whenever you're having a mood swing or irritability spike or a hot flash, right? Irritation, you can say, hey, I'm having this intense feeling. And now you can choose how you want to respond to it, right? Do I need to reflect on the ways that my life is a bit unmanageable right now? Do I need to start saying no to things? You can also look at it and say, okay, do I need to renegotiate some of my relationship boundaries? Because remember, with perimenopause, your libido can change. You can start having discomfort or pain with sex. You can struggle with energy because you're not getting as much sleep. And so you also may not be okay with doing more of the household chores. So you can communicate these changes with your partner in a calm and loving way, right? Like, I love you and I need more quiet time tonight. I love you and I'd like us to address the things that need to get done inside the house as partners instead of me taking on most of the responsibilities with that. I need the way that we're having sex to change. So having discussions in this way is relational empowerment. It's not a threat. It's not an ultimatum, but it's an invitation to grow together. Now, also remember when you're practicing boundaries to be really compassionate with yourself, right? So whenever we start practicing with boundaries, initially we mess up and we can think back, I wish I would have done this different. So when you find yourself doing that, just remember self-compassion. I'm doing the best I can in this moment with the information that I have. And you can also, if you mess up, go back and make a repair. Now, if you're in a relationship where your partner is really resistant to changing things up, which that can happen because it's like you're changing the dance steps to a dance that you and your partner have likely been doing for years, then you need to find a really good couples therapist to help you guys navigate and sort through that. So just to summarize, what I'd like for you to do is to journal this week. And I want you to ask yourself, where do I feel the most drained right now? What is completely exhausting me? Then what boundary needs attention, right? Am I exhausted because I keep trying to figure everything out for everybody else? Am I exhausted because I keep saying yes to things? Am I exhausted because I'm not asking for help? Why? What is draining me so much right now? And then what would a loving no sound like? So I want you to practice setting one small boundary in real life after you listen to this podcast. Think what's draining you the most, what a loving no would sound like, and then go ahead and make that small boundary. And notice how you feel afterwards. Sometimes we can feel relief, but sometimes we can also feel guilty for setting a boundary or making a request. So whatever comes up for you, just remember it's okay. And if you do feel guilty, it doesn't mean that you didn't need to set the boundary. Some people feel guilty and they think, oh, wow, I shouldn't have done that. But that's actually not what the guilt means. The guilt means that that's just an old belief pattern that you're changing. And because you're changing an old belief pattern, some of that guilt is coming up. So in closing, perimenopause does really invite you to live a more truthful life. And boundaries are a way that you can honor the truth in yourself, in your body, and in your relationships. And as Pia Melody reminds us, boundaries are acts of self-care and self-containment, and they are the bridge to authentic intimacy. And together, you can move from resentment to understanding with your partner, also from exhaustion to connection, by talking about and sharing your boundaries. So if today's episode resonated, share it with another woman in perimenopause who needs to hear this about boundaries. Let them know that boundaries are not selfish, that they're actually necessary. And thank you again for listening today.
Thanks for spending time with me today. I hope you found something helpful, validating, or just a little more human in our conversation. Remember, while I'm a licensed therapist, I'm not your therapist, and I'm not a medical doctor. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute medical or mental health advice. For personalized care, please consult with a licensed healthcare provider or mental health professional trained in the area you're seeking support. You deserve expert guidance that's tailored just for you.